What's going on, guys? Welcome back to the channel. In today's video, I'm going to go over the trades that we end up taking today inside the Discord, as well as the game plan going into tomorrow and what I'm going to be looking for. So when it came to today, obviously we ended up having a big gap down Monday and Sunday night for futures open, and today we end up gapping down quite a bit. And if we look at the charts here, I told you guys the key levels on ES to watch for going into today. And told you guys most likely we're going to be playing a short off of one of these fibs or a long if we end up dumping lower into these bottom fibs here. And what ended up happening was, you could see here right off of open, we dropped a lot. So, or not right off open, I meant like overnight we dropped a lot, and we opened right at this fib level right in here. We didn't open like at the level. We ended up kind of retesting it, which, you know, if you wanted to go long, you could have went long right here, 10-point stop, and you end up getting all the way up to the next fib, which is like 33 points just about on ES. And that was a beautiful long if you end up taking. For me, I was more so focused on taking trades to the downside. I was interested in shorting this upper fib if we got there, and that's why I ended up taking. Unfortunately, I only was able to capitalize on like half size on a 15-point trade. So what I ended up doing was taking a short at 6,900, and on this immediate pullback right here, we're already up like 15 points. I trimmed half, moved my stop to break even, and I was in at 69.01, and this went to 69.02. So we got stopped out by like a point and a half at break even before this ended up just dumping lower. And this next fib right here, 68.66, would have been my final take profit on that trade, or at least be out most on this trade, because that's already, again, like 33 points. And then we end up breaking below this fib, and I think I saw some people take this trade. I was just not a fan of taking a long off of this fib again, because when we pull up the options charts, this kind of gives you the sense of direction of what was going on. So if we pull up these 680 puts, this isn't the 0DT chart. If we pull up the 680 puts, or the 675 puts is what we had, because we picked new contracts today since the market was closed on Monday. We picked new ones today, and we end up flipping bearish on SPY today. And the only reason, I said you could have long that one fib off of, or not off open, but that retest, was because a lot of the times when we get this like very large move overnight, the contracts and the SMAs do get funky sometimes. Like sometimes we'll get this massive gap down, and then we'll pull all the way back and lose the 10, the 50, because of like such an aggressive move overnight. Sometimes this doesn't end up holding, and sometimes the 50 SMA just ends up turning down at some point. So I'm like, okay, maybe that will end up happening. But once this started to develop here and we started to kind of stall around this area, I'm like, okay, this is kind of shaping up to look like we're gonna actually see a move lower. Because if we look in the higher time frames, we end up breaking above the 1 hour 50. We were at like the 2 hour 50. It wasn't sloped down too aggressively, and we didn't even hit the 4 hour yet. So obviously we end up hitting that into the close, but we weren't at that major resistance point yet. So, you know, looking like during that like time, I was like, okay, I think this has a chance of going lower, and that's why I did end up taking that 6,900 level short, because it's kind of like that, like we're still shorting the rips, like we're still interested in taking shorts, and the only long was that off the open, and I would have taken anything else like going long. Like there was no reason to. Again, like when we opened, it made sense that we ended up pulling back on this like 30-minute chart, because price was all the way at 271. The 50 is all the way down at $1. The 10 SMA was probably even below that at some point. So, you know, having a pullback on the premium made like complete sense. So taking the long off open, definitely like a trade you could have taken. Definitely wouldn't have been against it. I just didn't take it. I was more interested in looking for a short later on in the day if we got it. And yeah, so that's kind of what ended up happening. That's kind of my thoughts going into today. I was just a little cautious of the long side off the open there, but you know, like both sides ended up getting paid today. If you took longs, you got paid. This fib level ended up paying nicely off of that open right here. And obviously, if you didn't get the entry before market open, which, you know, it's not the best thing to do, go long before market open. It could be very volatile. So, you know, let price do its thing. We end up getting the pullback right there, go long, TP up here. And, you know, when we reach this upper fib level, you 100% should be out majority, because again, with how the 30-minute chart looks, and we're kind of still in the shorting the rip phase. So, you know, you definitely want to be pretty much all out at this point up in here. And if it starts to reject, just get out like the rest of your position, because there's no point in holding this all the way back to break even at this point. So, you know, you got 30 points on ES, that's plenty. And then We obviously ended up getting, I mean, you could have just flipped short right at that 6,900 level, take profits, flip short, right to the next fib. But obviously, I ended up moving my stop a little early, so I kind of, I ended up paying for that. But I was just keeping risk a little bit tighter just because I knew how we looked on that 30-minute chart. Like, I still didn't know if we were going to get the trend or not. And as time went on, I'm like, okay, this does look like we're going to get the trend, but it was already kind of too late by the time we end up, seeing this dump down in here. I'm not going to chase the move or anything, but yeah, that's kind of what I ended up doing. That was my thought process going into today. And then when we got this dump to this fib level right here, 68.66, the 0DT puts were crossing, and I didn't really know what I was gonna do at this point, because we're at the fib level, puts are crossing. I'm not really gonna take, it's just not a high confidence trade for me to take a put cross. And also with how it ended up looking, it wasn't the best looking cross in the world, because this 50 was kind of sloped up aggressively, and when it gets to a certain point, I don't really like when it's sloped up super hard. But if you did want to play the cross, this dip right here would have been your opportunity, because by the time we actually got the cross and actually had a solid entry to take, the premiums were all the way up here at a dollar. 10 SMAs all the way down here at 60, 65 at best. So wait for the pullback if you did want to take this, and you could have entered right here at the 10.70 all the way up to 244, all the way up to 291. If you trailed the 10 SMA, I mean, you could have, this wasn't really a close blow. 230, sure, maybe. But this just ended up holding the 10 SMA the rest of the day, and you could have had a very big move out of that if you ended up taking that. But again, it wasn't the best setup in the world. We were at a fib level, so that wasn't something I wanted to take. Originally, I was going to take the put cross, but I didn't realize ES was super weak, and by the time we ended up crossing, we're at the fib level, so it wasn't something I did love. So I just sat out and let price do its thing. So that's kind of what we ended up doing today. And then going into tomorrow, we're I definitely fight favorite higher. And when we look at this 30-minute, or not 30-minute, the 4-hour chart, like I said, we're at that 4-hour 50. This is a massive resistance point on the put side here. So since it's on the puts, I'd favor this rejecting. We get a solid bounce, probably all the way to this 50 SMA at least on the put side. If you guys been trading the system, this ends the trend probably 80-90% of the time. This is where we end up bottoming out at, and since it's sloped down quite a bit, I would favor this giving some sort of initial rejection off of here. And then we also end up closing at this fib level down in here, which you could have honestly went long on this overnight. I know the overnight trades don't do too well, but this is kind of one of those scenarios where this is a more probable trade to take overnight, because we have the 4-hour 50 in confluence with this fib level right in here. And yeah, you could honestly ride this all the way up to 68.66. That's going to be a 36-point move if we get all the way up in there. I know Trump is speaking at 8:30 in the morning, so obviously I'd probably be all out of that position by then, or just move your stop up in profit so you kind of don't get wicked out of it if there's some crazy candle that goes on. But if we trend higher, we could pretty much, I'd imagine we may hit this fib level overnight and maybe early in the morning tomorrow. So yeah, you can see this fib level ended up hitting perfectly, 68.29. And again, this is one of those scenarios where I do think this is that's a good trade you could have taken overnight. At this point, you're already up 16, or what are we at, 49. You're already up 20 points right there. So at this point, you could be trimming if you want, or break even. TP's up in here. Usually when the trade's up 25-30 points, that's where I'd end up starting to trim off some and just ride the rest up until that upper fib level if we hit it. But yeah, I do think that's a very solid trade to take. We're pretty down, pretty extended here on the fib. So tomorrow, wouldn't be surprised if we saw that 68.66 level up in here. I'm not really too sure on what I'm going to be doing. If we're sitting at the 50 SMA on the 30-minute and we're at a fib level, probably be a good short to take. But again, at the same time, wouldn't be surprised if we did end up breaking the 30-minute, because eventually break the 30-minute, because usually that 4-hour 50 does end the trend. So I wouldn't be looking for the craziest move in the world off of a fib level. Once I'm up 20, 25 points, trim half, move stops, and yeah, kind of go from there. Because even we could still lose the 50, but we could get that initial bounce off of it, where we come up to the 10 SMA and then it hits the 10 and rejects, goes back down, breaks the 50. So that'd be kind of the best scenario that could play out in our favor, because we could get a move and then we don't really get penalized for losing the trend. So that'd kind of be the best way to for all this to kind of play out. But yeah, it's kind of the plan for tomorrow. And then obviously if we have some 0DT chart in our favor with the fib level, that's an added plus to the trade. Or if we average up, that's an added plus to the trade when we're taking a fib trade. But that's pretty much all I got. If you guys enjoyed, drop a sub. And yeah, that's all I got. I'm out. Peace.